So the idea of Make My Trip, or actually a travel portal, I think the name Make My Trip came a little later, was actually germinated in my mind perhaps subliminally in late 99. I was working with GE Capital. I had a very interesting job where my role was to find new avenues for distributing our financial services products under the GE countrywide name, which is GE Money now. And the new avenue was obviously the internet at that point of time. So willy-nilly, I came across some of the top businesses in the country at that time on the internet, like Rediff, Naukri.com, as well as India Times. And I think I was quite taken in that this is going to be a game changer for the way we conduct our lives. And later in the early part of 2000, I think I was getting more and more encouraged that this opportunity is there for young companies, new companies, entrepreneurs to seize, and may actually belong more to this segment rather than to large corporations like the one I was working in, just because it was so different, so new. And large corporations would fundamentally have to alter the way they work. Also, I'm a big believer in the reason for living, and I think the reason for being, and I think companies succeed when they focus on one or two things, which is really the raison d'etre for that company. And for large companies, not so easy to change completely, or to, as they say, to get an elephant to waltz is not easy. And for a young company, if you grow up with that only focus, then your chances of success probably are higher. So I took the leap in April 2000, and I started my own thing, which the company was called International Web Travel. And then before we launched the first website from our stable, we had come up with the name Make My Trip. This was in October 2000. So I think it was a culmination of two things. One is the opportunity which the internet provided, and perhaps the stronger force, which I could only connect the dots later in life, was a desire to do my own thing. So I had worked in 3 different jobs after my MBA with 3 really good companies, ABN AMRO Bank, AMF Bowling, and GE Capital. Learned a lot, but I think somewhere there was a desire which was not fulfilled, which was to do my own thing. And I'm grateful that I haven't had to look back in these 15 years. In the initial days of Make My Trip, we actually launched Make My Trip for India, and even right in the beginning, we had Make My Trip for non-resident Indians, particularly those in the US coming to India. So our vision that time was to be the defining place for people to book travel to India, from India, and within India. Somewhere along the way, I guess that worked out. For the first 5 years of our existence, 2000, 2005, we actually focused exclusively on the NRI market, only for a reason, that India wasn't ready to buy online. So it's not, we wanted to sell to Indians, but very quickly we realized that people in India were ready to research online, but not ready to buy online. Basically, as I say, lots of lookers, very few bookers. And it was because the internet was a new thing. Credit card penetration was very low. People weren't comfortable buying online. So these things take time. So I think in hindsight, a very wise thing we did was focus exclusively on the NRI market. NRIs in the US were comfortable buying online. They were comfortable with companies like Expedia.com, Travelocity.com, Amazon.com. So they were comfortable buying online. And that kind of kept us going. It was a small business, but a tidy business. And actually a very, I think, resilient business, because it kept us going through the downturn of 2001. So .com bust happened, most internet companies imploded. 9/11 really hit the world of travel very badly. That was also in 2001. And then the SARS epidemic in 2002. So I think the world of online travel was ravaged by multiple forces. But we kept going because this was a very, very resilient market. Because coming to India was very often not a holiday. It was actually an inelastic demand. People came to India because they were coming back home. They ferried their parents to the US because kids were being born, or they wanted to be with their parents, etc. So I think, again, we were quite fortunate, but we also seized that opportunity. Most of the other online travel portals at that point of time, I think did not survive. And we were fortunate, again, because I think we were ready to put our ear to the ground, understand how macro forces were changing, and align ourselves. And I think that's a very big lesson for all young companies, that markets are changing very fast. You want to stay attuned to the changing time and be nimble. And I think that's very important. Then in 2005, around 2004, I thought that the internet, the India market was ready. Two forces really, or two events convinced me. One is Indian Railways, IRCTC, must give them credit for getting the Indian market and Indians ready to buy online. So getting them comfortable to pay online. As we know, buying a rail ticket was a big chore and a difficult activity prior to IRCTC, and they made it very easy. So Indians got comfortable putting their credit card online. And the second was the advent of low-cost carriers. So low-cost carriers, LCCs as we call them, first one was Air Deccan. It was launched in 2004, and then many followed. That provided us a very interesting opportunity, which was to provide customers with all the relevant options of flights at one go, which traditional travel agents weren't able to do, because traditional travel agents weren't incentivized to sell low-cost carriers. They didn't give any commission. Also, you couldn't hold a ticket. So if an agent booked a ticket for you and you changed your mind, then the agent went out of pocket. So we could solve that with technology, and we saw that opportunity. And we were probably the first OTA in the world to build direct connects with low-cost carriers. So when you put in a simple query like Delhi, Bangalore, Delhi, at the back end, various things happen. We open a thread which goes to the GDS, the Global Distribution System, in our case Amadeus, which pulls all the full service content and gives it to you. And we open multiple threads for every low-cost carrier which goes to their host system and gives you that content. And in milliseconds, we arrange it for you in a sort order of price or any other factor that you want. And you're able to basically make a decision where you're in charge. So I think in 2005, when we launched in India, our fundamental proposition to the customer was that you're in control. You choose, you make a value-added choice, and your travel agent won't do that. And that was a very heady, offering for the customer. Customers loved it because they wanted to know, should they, pay 1,000 rupees more for in-flight entertainment, or should they save 1,000 rupees and go on a low-cost carrier at 5 a.m. in the morning and save another 500 rupees. So I think fundamentally we put control back in the hands of customer, and we were the first to launch in India with this offering, and our customers loved it. And I think ever since that, the story has been up and away for MakeMyTrip. Down the line, we started offering other travel products, hotels. So hotel bookings today is very important for us. Holidays. So hotels and holidays now account for virtually half our business. So we've come a long way from being only flights. And the whole bouquet of offerings. So we also allow bus tickets and rail ticket bookings and travel insurance. So really anything in the travel stable, we like to be the one-stop shop. And I think MakeMyTrip has become synonymous with the word online travel. And that has been, something which is very gratifying to me personally. So I think things are going very well for MakeMyTrip from 2005 till about 2009. We were growing quite fast organically. And around 2009, I remember a board meeting we had, probably even, late 2009, 2010. And one of our board members, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who is the promoter of Naukri.com, InfoEdge. So Sanjeev actually mentioned that, your company is probably now at the scale where you should be thinking about an IPO. And we honestly had no clue, no idea whatsoever. I mean, we were building a company, but we were not so focused on exit ever. It was more about building a really good brand and a good service. And we said, really? He says, yeah, this was around the time at this scale where InfoEdge, they'd already listed in India, I think in 2007. And he says, I think you're getting to that scale and you should think about it seriously. And we said, okay. And we started evaluating. We called in bankers. We called in auditors. And I remember in February 2010, we had our first meeting for the IPO planning. We debated a lot. In fact, the board debated a lot. Should it be India or should it be the US? We finally went with listing in the US option because we thought that there is a far more and a deeper understanding of the internet business model in the US. There were at least maybe 50, 100 companies listed there. Many of them foreign companies, not from the US markets, but from China and other markets, than in India. In India, I think it was only InfoEdge at that point of time. And that gave us the confidence that maybe we should look at the US. And so February was our first meeting, and by August 2010 we had actually listed already on NASDAQ. We were one of the first Indian companies to list out there, so it was a very proud moment. And even now, I think there are very few entrepreneurial Indian companies who have listed there. There are many ADRs of existing listed companies in India there, but we would be very among the very few, select few who listed there. It was a tremendous achievement. I think it was probably our biggest financial milestone. It unlocked a lot of value for our investors, our private equity investors, and more importantly for employees. When we listed, 70% of our staff was covered under ESOP, and so for them it was a great wealth creation opportunity. And yeah, we're very proud that we were able to raise the Indian flag on NASDAQ and list a young Indian entrepreneurial company there within 10 years of launching. 15 years down the line, MakeMyTrip is a far more mature company, from far cry from the young company we were way back even in 2005 when we listed in India. Like I mentioned earlier, we now have a very nice product mix where about 50% of our business comes from air, and then 50% comes from hotel packages and other segments of the travel space, and that gives us a very solid proposition for our customers. I think going forward, we are going to see more and more on the accommodation space. It's an untapped opportunity. Just to give you an idea, about 45% of all air tickets are booked online today. 30% with the OTAs, of which we have half the market. So we have about a 15% market share, 15 percentage points. And then about 15% is with supplier direct with the airlines. But there is still 55% to go. And I think at some stage, probably that market, it'll grow slowly online now because it's a big market, but the whole pie is expanding. I would suspect that this will still keep growing to about 60-70%. To give perspective, the US market is about 75% is online, and I think over time, and as you would imagine, India is going more and more online, but through mobile, and that's become a very big force. If we look at the hotel segment, that is actually very underpenetrated. Even today, only about 10% of all hotel rooms, close to 1 million hotel rooms in the country, are penetrated online, and that market is growing very fast. So I think our big growth is going to come both on the hotel side as well as packages, both outbound travel as well as domestic. Outbound provides a lot of opportunity because, as we know, India is booming. People have the money, people want to travel. I think the moment they are able to, people like to put a quick trip overseas after they've seen a few places in India. We are seeing that trend, particularly regional. A lot of people are very keen to travel out to Southeast Asia and Middle East, where the offering is quite good from a value for money point of view. So I think going forward, we are going to see a lot more action there. We're going to see a lot of cross-sell. So people come in to buy a flight ticket, and then our endeavor is that we also ask them, you're not coming back on the same day, can we cross-sell to you a hotel? And if you book together, then you save. So there's a clear saving perspective, a saving opportunity, because suppliers like airlines and hotels are happy to give you a bundled product much cheaper, where they don't want to dilute their price, but bundled together, they don't want to dilute their brand. So that's a good offering. Flight Plus Hotels is a win-win product according to us. And the big change we are seeing overall is just the tremendous growth on mobile internet. To give again an idea, about 2 years ago, 120 million Indians were online, mostly through desktop. Today, 300 million Indians are online, mostly through mobile. So all of this growth of 180 million, most of it has come through mobile internet. With smartphones getting cheaper and cheaper, 3G and even 4G getting more prevalent, people are very comfortable accessing the internet through their phone. There are many people who don't own a desktop device at all, and this is their gateway into the World Wide Web, and they're very comfortable booking through this. So most of our development and our offering is now being done on mobile. Our offerings of app, our MakeMyTrip app has been now downloaded by more than 10 million people, and it's growing fast, and we find more and more of our customers using the mobile for bookings. To exemplify, more than now 45% of our bookings of hotel come through mobile already. So going forward, I see that as being the key way of growth. Where we'll be 4 to 5 years from now is hard to say, but what I can tell you, we want to stay synonymous with online travel. We want to keep the customer at the center of our universe, and all our offerings are always made keeping in mind what does our customer really want. Can we make it easier? Can we relieve some pain points? Can we give them more offerings so that with a touch of, on their smartphone, a few touches they can get done, and then we can give a lot of post-sales help to them. If they're traveling out for holiday, can we also give them travel guides on the mobile, which they can use when they're on the move? Can we make all their reservations and their, so that their calendar already has their reservations, so when they arrive at the airport or the hotel, they just have to show their calendar and they don't have to carry any more information with them or pieces of paper. So I think we are fundamentally trying to change the way people travel, making it much easier. Traveling with a phone, with a downloaded travel guide for that city without having to access Wi-Fi is a real pleasure, and people now don't have to travel with books and maps and everything else. All their schedules are there, information about the city, pictorial guides. When they get into tourist destinations and landmarks, then they can actually get a guided tour right with their phone. So the phone has become a very powerful way, and we know where you are. We can give you value-added offers. We're tying up with restaurants in different parts of the world, where the restaurants can, push a great offering to you, knowing that you're there and you're traveling through us. So you're going to find travel evolve in an amazing way, and you will have all the power in your hand when you travel with Make My Trip. I think from an entrepreneurial ecosystem point of view, there's never been a better time for India. Indians fundamentally are entrepreneurial, and the internet and the mobile are affording great platforms. The market is very ripe. There's a lot of consuming power. India has among the youngest populations in the world. 45% of our people are, I think, under the age of 25. So it's really booming. So as India growth rates are continuing to do well, and hopefully that will be the way going forward, a lot of young Indians will come into the fold who will grow up on the internet, who will grow up with mobiles, and they'll be very comfortable. So I think there are a lot of business opportunities here, and the VCs and the PE players, venture capitalists and private equity players obviously sense that opportunity, and they're here in the market in a big way. You see all these very large sums of money going into young companies, and people are wondering what's going on, but that's essentially a bet on the future. So a lot of that is a bet on the future. Some of these companies have already grown well. So I think these are our golden years. So for the next decade, I don't think there's a better place to invest than India. And I've spoken to many venture capitalists around the world, and they're saying India is still probably the best place. Yes, sometimes, the valuations temporarily could be a little high. There could be a bit of a bubble. You kind see settling down. But fundamentally, I think India affords a really, really exciting opportunity to invest. We are trying to do two things. As Make My Trip, we started a travel innovation fund of 15 million, and it's an evergreen fund. Where we are, through this fund, we are looking at exciting new opportunities, disruptive technologies in travel to invest in. We've already made about 4 investments in this area, and we're looking for more. So we think going forward, we'll look for more. At a personal level, I've been fairly engaged on personal investment. I think it's a good way to give back, angel investing. It does take a lot of time, so I'm trying to find a smarter way to do it. I work with some angel funds very closely now, who in turn spend most of their time looking at good companies. And then, I do try to meet at least 2 young companies a week from a mentoring point of view, whether they're investee companies or not. So I think that's one way we can, entrepreneurs who've already seen some of this can help. I'm president of the Indus Entrepreneurs TIE for the Delhi chapter. It's a very vibrant body which is fostering the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that's also a way of giving back to the ecosystem for me. So it's a very gratifying experience. I think by mentoring, you can actually help entrepreneurs even more than you can by investing. As I always say, there are many people who are ready to give money, but there are very few people who are ready to give time. So yeah, that's my little way of helping.